time to resume. Thanks for attending the last subsession of the afternoon. So we have one in presence, one presentation in presence, and two others in a room way. So the first one is Caterina et al. Stratigraphic Architecture, Sedimentology and Structure of the Middle-Pleistocene Corinth Canal, Greece, and ANALOGUE STRAITS. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Liège in Belgium, and I will present you one of the bases of my PhD project. So first, I would like to thank the organizer for letting me the opportunity to present in front of you. So I will speak about the Corinth Canal in the Corinth Gulf area, and the evidence of it being a former tidal strait. So we are in the Corinth Gulf, and you have already had a presentation about the actual strait, but I will speak about this region and the man-made Corinth Canal being a former strait. And this is important because we can use it as an analog for past tidal straits. And in this particular context, it's more important because we are able to study tidal dynamics in the microtidal context of the Mediterranean Sea. So how we do this study? First, we look at the outcrop data by doing sedimentological section and by studying the millimeter scale with the facies. And then we use the photogrammetric model to study in detail the architectures and the geometries of the large scale. And we were able to bridge the gap between the two scales due to the high resolution of this model. So we built this model by flying a drone through the canal and taking around 60,000 pictures. So you can see that this is a good resolution model that helps us clearly to bridge the gap between the facies and the large scale. So for the facies, we identified some facies at the outcrop. Then we associate depositional processes to them, and by regrouping some facies through their depositional process, we are able to build facies associations. And these facies associations are important because we are able to give them some depositional environment. For example, here we have a facies from our facies association number 6, which is the most important one in this case. And I will take more in detail about this facies association. But that's one part. And the other part is using the photogrammetric model to clearly see some structures, some interesting sedimentological structures, but also many faults and the part of a central host. And then by combining the two informations, we are able to build some horizons of the most important facies association that we have seen in the canal. So I will propose you to jump with me in the model, and if you like to see one horizon, please follow the yellow one, which is the most important one. So you can clearly see that the resolution is quite good, and that we see diverse elements from a large scale, or if we do some close-ups, some different elements that are high resolution in this model. And you can see here the end of the central host I was talking about earlier. And so, by doing some little close-ups, you can clearly see some interesting structures. But what's most important is that if we go into the detail, we can clearly see high-resoluted structures like this one, and I will talk about it really soon. So this structure is in our facies association number 6, which is the most important, and it's built from planar and cross-stratified sands, but also granules and conglomerates. You can see here the huge diversity of this facies association in terms of grain size, but more importantly, there is no evidence of mud in this facies association. And both at the outcrop and at the larger scale, we can see some asymmetric herringbones, and these are represented here. So be careful, this is the opposite wall of the section, so on the section we are here, but on the opposite wall. And we can see asymmetric herringbones. And these asymmetric structures are typical for tidal straits because the lower forceps that are thicker and really bigger, up to 7 meters, are built with the dominant current that flows through the northwest in this case. And the thinner and upper sets that with a steeper angle are mapping toward the southeast, so in the reverse secondary flow direction. And due to the size, we can clearly emphasize the tidal amplification of one tidal phase over the other. And so, if we change the canal wall, we can see diverse structures, but some are really interesting and very well resolute with the model. So, you can see one very interesting structure here, and please remind it for a few seconds while we are switching to another structure which is next to the previous one, with all of these structures. And these structures are important because they are conglomeratic compound-based dunes. And you can clearly see the two opposite downlapping directions, with the first order going towards the northwest and the second order going towards the southeast. And since we didn't find any mud in the sedimentological section that we made, and due to the fact that they are conglomeratic material, we suppose that it was an high energy environment. And in a microtidal context, having such a high energy environment is mainly only possible due to the presence of a strait. And the presence of a strait is emphasized by the fact that we have two downlapping directions, with one being more important than the other. So that's for the structures you can see in the northwestern part of the canal. So now, if we go to the other side of the canal, you can see here the central host, and here you can see that the facet association number 6 is reappearing. But this time, what's important to look at is the direction of the main downlapping direction, which is towards the southeast in this part. So we can sum up that we are in a former strait with two opposite directions from a central eye, which is the central host, that we can identify as the seal of the strait, and then we have, due to the fault activity, some accommodation for the sediments of the conglomeratic bedded dunes. And this is pretty unique, so we propose to complete the model from longitudinal by adding maybe conglomerate tidal dunes in the regions where the conglomeratic supply can be supported with evidence of diverse clasts. So that's the main conclusion for this study, that we are in the presence of a former tidal strait in the canal, in the canal of Corinth area. And to go further, and that's the goal of my PhD, the point is to study what was the impact of this strait on the global circulation in the Corinth Gulf. And by mixing the studies between Roman and my study, I would be able to model and better understand the bottom currents in the Corinth Gulf, both actually at our day and both in the past by testing some paleogeographies with the evidence of a connection in this area. And thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Basil, for that outstanding 3D journey in the canal. Questions? Yes.
Very impressive data set as well. I was just wondering, because I see that basically the places where you have no data are maybe relatively limited, which is no surprise because it's so steep. But I was just wondering if you can comment on perhaps the uncertainty that's involved in them interpreting the phases associations throughout the canal.
Yeah, so with a few logit sections, but as you said, that it's mostly inaccessible. But with the model, we are able to continue the horizon we see at the outcrop and to extend them through the entire walls of the canal. So, for example, in this section, we identified this horizon, and with the high-resolution model, we were able to prolong it in both directions. And yes, of course, there is a fault game, but the model is quite good resoluted that, and we were able to just continue the horizon, and there is still a bit of uncertainty because we have no sedimentological data at this place, but I'm really confident in the model and how it's resoluted to build this kind of section.
Other questions?
Thank you, Basil, for this three-dimensional outstanding model. My question is about the grain size of your cross-bending. And you talk about conglomeratic dunes, but can you see, since you have such kind of huge lateral control on your data, which is the dominant control over the strike, and do you see any relevant grain size change in the same direction of the expected sediment transport?
I would say no, because when we look at the section, there is no classment for the class, and it was kind of the same lithology from this point to this point, and by looking at the model, okay, it's well resoluted. We can have some places where we can clearly see some grains with the pictures, but we have an outer look than the outcrop one, so we can't clearly say if there is a difference between the granules we suspect here and this one. But for me, it's kind of the same all over this facets association.
We have time for one more question.
Can I have just one comment on this?
Yes,
Eventually, there's
of course. There's no.
My comment is that eventually my suggestion is to be a little bit careful on defining this conglomeratic, because a dune field is some object which have some extension. So, and this object may also exhibit significant grain size changes depending on where the currents, where we work in the same object. So if you do not have at the moment any strict control on this data, maybe it would be careful to define a conglomerate of these dunes in a general way.